Okay, this is my presentation evaluating my graphics interactive piece. What I'm going to be doing is trying to look back at my piece which I did for the Novium and understanding or identify where the strengths and weaknesses, so where I was successful and where I perhaps wasn't successful, and then also try and respond to some of the feedback which I gained, and hopefully that will allow me to put together like a short action plan, and I can adapt this to future projects. So after we visited the Novium and kind of got our brief and we knew what we had to do, I set about some primary research. We'd already looked through the Novium and seen what they had to offer, so I thought it would be a good idea to perhaps visit their competitors, like other museums, and see kind of what they were doing with this stuff. But I went and visited Horsham Museum and Art Gallery. But in terms of interactivity, they didn't really have anything to offer. The closest they had were these information boards, which I thought they could have adapted that to some kind of interactive display, and you can click through it and stuff. But I spoke to them about that, and they said it wasn't something they really were interested in. But I also went there to look at designs and lay out their information, because I think it's really important to understand what other people are doing, and also accessibility as well. Secondary research, I thought was fairly thorough. I looked at a company called Heritage, and they make this is what they do. They make interactive products for museums. And whilst each product that I looked at was from a different museum, I think it would have been nice to perhaps look from a different company, because because this is everything that Heritage had done, there may be like a kind of style which they stick to. It might be nice to try and find another company who perhaps does things differently, like lays out information differently, or has different attitudes towards accessibility or something. And what I think I did was I focused on the positives of what they did rather than the negatives. I think it's quite important to understand what other people are doing wrong as well as what they're doing right, because you could then apply that to your own stuff and make sure you don't make the same mistakes. Legal and ethical, there was a couple of things. There was a lot of my final product was stock images. The reason for that I'll come on to later, but I think the fact that I used so many stock images it made the final product more universal rather than local. And by that I mean that it's something that everyone could relate to, not just, it didn't kind of focus on Chichester, which I think is what the Novium wanted. So I could have done something like find a manor house or something similar to this image which I used and photograph that. Something just to make it a bit more tailored to Chichester, which I don't think my final product was. Also, in terms of accessibility, it was extremely limited. People with sight impairments or hard of hearing wouldn't really be able to use it, because there was no subtitles or audio description. But that wasn't something that I'd done by accident. I kind of set out beforehand that this product would have a minimum audience requirement because of the content. There was a lot of video content in it. So it's not going to be, unless I added audio description for every single video and stuff like that, it's not something that would have been feasible given the time that we had. My final product had a really, really high content focus, and by that I mean that it wasn't the focus of it wasn't so much on the interactivity of the project; it was more on the video. In terms of interactivity, the product was simply click video back, and that loop. And I mean that was kind of, for the software I was using, Encore, that was fine. That's what Encore does. But if I'd used another piece of software like Fireworks or Flash, I could have perhaps had like more animation in there, or kind of linking pages to pages and stuff like that. I also didn't represent any information graphically. By that I mean there wasn't much in terms of symbolism or text, and the reason for that was that because we had discussed with the Novium who the target audience was, being younger generation and older generation, I felt like, especially with the younger generation, their attention spans are like this long, so you have to I felt that I had to include something that was always moving and always making sound, so you really are keeping their attention on what's happening. And also, my idea changed twice, because my initial idea included, I was going to include products from the Novium, and it would be like a 360 of the thing with information and stuff, because that idea based itself on that I always wanted to look behind the object in the cabinet, because in the cabinet it's quite 2D and boring. I always wanted to look and see like that, which I always found really interesting. But that wasn't possible because the Novium couldn't, I don't know what was happening, we couldn't get in. So then I had to change my idea quite late on. And it changed to simply the same thing but with 3D models. But I decided not to go with that one because I haven't got the skills to make realistic 3D models of what they have. So it would have to have been royalty-free images or royalty-free products or stuff like that. And I think using that, it would basically mean that the whole of my thing is a royalty-free purchase. I've just put it together, and it didn't really give me a chance to demonstrate my skills in any way. I'd just be taking everything from everyone else and kind of saying, there you go. I think being able to do the narratives, which I have done, allowed me to demonstrate my skills in that way. I think that the final product could have had, more content. I'd like to have done, as it stood, I had 3 videos. I would like to have had more, but at the same time, I don't know if I needed more. Like perhaps people may not want to sit through and watch a whole heap of videos. Maybe there's like a happy medium in that not too less and not too much. I also like to do something like maybe have different rooms. So instead of just having this one room to look around, you could perhaps look in different rooms of the house, and then there'll be items that will be related to that room and explore the whole house and the whole theme of staying in the whole house rather than just one room. Also, like I mentioned previously, I don't think it related completely to the Novium. I think it was quite universal rather than local, so I could have done that by including products that the Novium had in their cabinets. And that kind of links back to my initial idea, but I could have done a narrative thing about some of the products they had in there, and I think they, as the client, would really like that when you kind of use their items and you add to the value of those items. I think what I learned overall in the whole process was, for example, I think the first thing was my confidence in pitching. That was the first time that I had pitched to a live client with an idea. I pitched in front of class for peer feedback, never in front of a live client. Previously to actually pitching it, I read a book called The Secret of Steve Jobs' Presentation, because he was very well known for his pitches and being able to enthuse the audience with what he's trying to pitch to them. And in that book, it basically said you had to have passion about what you're pitching, and I think my passion came across that, especially when I spoke about the teddy bear narrative, because after I'd spoken to that, I tried to make it quite personal with the client by saying, trying to get them to think about their first bear. And I remember when we were setting up on testing day, when we were installing it all there, they stated, or one of the people asked if, they said they were looking forward to seeing what I'd done with the teddy bear bit. So that showed me that they took it on board and remembered what my idea was, which I think is quite important. I also learned about the importance of contingency. I think the biggest mistake I made in the whole project was not coming up with other ideas. I think I had this attitude of when I find my idea, I jump on that idea and then that's what I'm going to do. I think what I should do in the future is kind of come up with an idea and then put it aside and then come up with another, come up with as many feasible ideas as I can, because I think a lot of time was wasted building up to my initial idea, and then when it became impossible to do, I was left stranded and I had to kind of come up with another idea in quite a short amount of time. And I think if I'd done a bit of contingency and come up with backup plans, it would allow me more time to develop my final idea and possibly include some of the things which I mentioned before. And also, this project highlighted the importance of feedback to me. When I finished my initial testing piece, I showed it to a couple of people and they highlighted that really, I don't know how I missed it, they said that I had a first play video included which gave the instructions, but I never thought that once it had been played, I never realised that it wouldn't be played again, so people would be walking up to a screen and they wouldn't know what to do. And there was a really simple piece of advice, just include a button to play the video again. So just a quick button at the bottom which said click for instructions, and then that allowed the audience to go back and they wouldn't be confused. And that really stood out for me, that really kind of hit home that it really is important to test things before you do it. That's it.
Interesting. I'm going to put it out to ask questions.
You know, when you were saying you would like to have gone to go in the different rooms, was there a particular reason you chose to not do that at the time?
It simply came down to, because I hadn't done the contingency and different ideas, it just came down to time. I think it was trying to make the best with the time I had. I don't like to harp on that time too much because it's not really a bad excuse, but I mean, I think if I had done the contingency, that was, like I said, that was my main problem. If I come up with the idea sooner, rather than just stopping on my first idea, I could have developed it to go into different rooms.
Do you think you could have used something other than motion, which is your specialty? Well, tell me.
I had 3 narratives. One of them was video. Actually, no, 2 of them were video, and one of them was stop motion animation. I would have liked to have had perhaps a different, for the video, stop motion, and then perhaps I could have had a 3D model or something. I think if I had each narrative a different technique, I think that really could have encouraged the audience to sit down for more. Like I said before, if there was loads of videos and stuff to watch, then we just get bored and leave. But if each thing is going to be different, it becomes like a surprise element, which might encourage them to sit down and go through the whole thing.
Other than the feedback that suggested, being able to play that intro video again,
Yeah.
during testing, was there anything that came up, any technical problems or anything, the way it functioned?
Not really. It was quite, like I said, it was quite in terms of interactivity, it was really straightforward. So there wasn't a lot that could go wrong. It was simply button, click, video, finished, go back. It was, the whole thing really did focus on the content more than it did interactivity. Like in some people's, they had this clicked to have an animation happen on the button. It wasn't, I don't think I really, that's one of my regrets, I don't think I really challenged myself on the interactivity part. I think if I was really to challenge myself, I would have tried to do something in Flash or something like that.
What about more information, like piece of text or?
Yeah, I think the text, personally for me, I really want to keep that to a complete minimum, because I think, coming from my own experiences as a kid, whenever I saw big bulks of text, I just walked away, and I always went over to anything that was a picture or a television or something that was moving. I was always interested in things that were moving rather than reading.
Did you not want to attract the older audience as well?
I think, yeah,
Sometimes they like to read.
I see what you mean, yeah. I think that the video, I hope that the video appeals to both. I mean, with feedback that I got from some of the testing day when we did,
Yeah.
over the private viewing, I said. The feedback that came from some of the older generation was that they really liked the nostalgic elements that the video, like the teddy bear and stuff like that. There was a lot of nostalgic elements placed in the video, which that really appealed to them. And they identified that in their verbal feedback.
Any more questions? I've obviously got a few questions.
Yep.
I really like what you've just been talking about catering for different target audience, so moving away from like the static text and trying to find something that would draw attention. They've already got text there,
Yeah.
so why add to that? I understand that part. Was there something that you feel you could have done to your product to make it draw more attention? Because it's a static room.
I think what probably would have drawn more attention to it is if I could have had, if I could have had something in the menu that was moving, like perhaps the main character, instead of just coming out on the first page, could have been walking out and constantly moving on the screen, and, you know, like, I don't know, banging on the screen or something and trying to physically get attention. Or either that or just bright colours. It was black and white. The reason for that was because it was in the time period and it was trying to reflect that. But I think that being black and white, it pushed it to the background a bit. I think if it had even colours in some places, it would have just brought it out, moved it forward into attention a bit more.
They're all really, really nice, interesting, creative points. Even just like some instructions along in a bottom bar or something, even as simple as that, I think might have been supportive. What I'm thinking about in terms of technical aspects is thinking of when I try and sell a product to a client, I'm always thinking maybe a couple of steps ahead about, right, if they like it, is there anything else that I could suggest to sell them? Professionally, you want to make more money.
Yeah.
So that sounds really stingy, doesn't it? And really horrible. But you kind of thinking, right, I could do this. And I remember Russell last year, which was really interested in the heart and soul thing, kind of coming up with further ideas for the client. And when they came in to see the product, go, oh, I could also do this for you, It doesn't take 5 seconds. So what I'm thinking is, and I guess it's a long way of phrasing the question, is, does the fact that it's a DVD limit that capability, that option? Are you shooting yourself in the foot in terms of
Yes, I think.
broader?
I think.
So it worked for that purpose, but then what about cross-platform? What about alternative functions?
I think burning DVD certainly does limit it. It limits it to the sense that if say it was like a web page, for example. A web page can take you to all these different places, but it limits it to the disk. And also I think that because it's just a disk, it does. I can't explain what I've got in my head.
I'm just wondering if they said to you straight away, right, I love the product, can I host it on they gave you a page, which I was actually very much anticipating them doing. Can I swear on camera? No, okay, I won't. But I'm really disappointed they didn't, because they missed a trick there.
Gave us a page.
Yeah, absolutely. Extended their website. They've got a webmaster, right, who manages their content management system or whatever and keeps updating things. Would that have been preventative, the fact that you used Encore?
I think if we were to be doing it for the web page, and I think it certainly would have limited. I think if that was the case, if we had to make the web page, I probably would have chosen a different software. I could have achieved the same thing, probably maybe something even more interactively focused in Fireworks or Dreamweaver or Flash or something like that. I think they would have been better choices for if we were using a web page. Personally, for me, Encore was kind of the natural choice because I knew the purpose. It was just to play the video. The whole thing was focused on video. It just seemed, because there wasn't so much complexity in the interactiveness, it just seemed the smart choice, just because it's just click video back.
You did mention Flash quite a few times, but actually your thing would have been fine in HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and then very, very cross-browser, cross-platform friendly. I think that would have been like the best option.
Yeah, I think so.
Probably. Any other questions, guys? I've got one more question. You've talked a lot about areas you think could have been developed, and I think you hit some really good points there. But not necessarily benchmarking it against other products. Like, what are the things that like you were like fully trying to beat? What were your kind of heroes that you were like trying to match and even improve from?
That's another hard one. It was a lot of the majority of my primary and secondary research was all focused on my initial idea. Obviously, I had to kind of do some kind of research into my final idea, but the majority of it kind of came down to when I was looking at these ideas with my initial idea in mind. But there was a lot of stuff from Heritage, which was, I thought, aesthetically, in terms of the visuals and how they designed it and laid out, I think they were really good. I would like to have been able to challenge those, but like I said, with the Heritage, there wasn't anything in Heritage's work that was kind of similar to my final idea, which is disappointing. But
so in future, how are we gonna like not let that impact us so much? Because I do feel it does impact a little bit.
Yeah, no, I can, for me it goes completely down on contingency. It's always been my problem is that, and it's only in this project that I've kind of realised it is, and I've almost paid for it in the sense that I have one idea, I focus on it, and there was never kind of a thought of what happens if I can't do this. It was, this is it, that's what I'm going to do. It'll have to work. It was never a thought of, okay, but what else could I do? Now that's one possibility. It was another possibility. That, I think, had a huge impact on the final product. I think if I'd just come up with a few more ideas rather than stop at the first idea, I think that would have allowed me to develop that idea much more.
I think we can all learn from that. That very early on is like lots of concepts. Let's not even hold back about what's possible, what's realistic, or anything. That first mind mapping, what do we call it? We don't say brainstorming. We say thought shower and board blast because it's politically correct. So that would be maybe the time to like really and then maybe some earlier pitches.
Yeah.
To the group.
I think it was all once. I think once my initial idea couldn't be achieved, I think then it all became very rushed, and I think I started to panic until I kind of. I even did it again really. I think once my first idea couldn't work, then I started to panic, and then I would just take any idea that would work. I think the message for me on this whole project is focus more on the idea development and initial aims and stuff like that.
One final last thing. You mentioned like you did some stop frame animation and some video. Was there other kind of media that you would like to, or methods of presenting things, even if it still sticks at video, but it's not like maybe not necessarily live action? Can you think of other creative?
Well, I said I think Taryn asked that. I said that I think I could have gone back to I think I could have included some kind of 3D type model thing. It's just I think just approaching, because each thing had like a narrative story, and I think I didn't necessarily have to do that with every single thing. I think some of them could have just been purely informational, or I think it all how down to
each story's got its own kind of right way of presenting it, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a really good point. Thank you very much, Simon.
that's what.